Hello and welcome back. This video we're going to actually get the bird flying here. So what we want to do is basically be able to drag it back from its initial position. So if we've got it here, we'd be able to drag it back and then launch it, right, based on that angle and apply a force. So again, pretty straightforward here. So first thing that we need to do is figure out where our starting position is. Now, I haven't given it too much concern at the moment. I've just sort of placed it over here. I mean, you might want to move it around because this will be our starting position. Just something reasonable at the moment. We can fine tune it later. So we're going to have to capture that at the start. And then when we release the bird, we're going to have to know, sort of being able to sort of add that force in that direction, and it should be able to launch. Now, one thing that we will do, just to begin here, is on the rigid body, we're going to turn off gravity. So the gravity scale I'm going to set to 0. And that will just help us sort of move it around without worrying about it falling to the ground. Now, we'll go back to the bird controller here. And the first thing that we'll do is we'll come up to the start here and we'll create a variable to hold our initial position. And we'll make that a vector 3. And there we go, initial position. And in order to save that, right, we need to do that right away. So instead of using start here, I'm going to use awake. And that actually happens before start. And we'll simply set the initial position. We'll set that to the transform dot position. Okay. So it is simply, held in sort of the memory here. Oops, I shouldn't have done capitalization there. Transform dot position. There we go. That will simply hold the initial position, okay, in its memory. Now, when we go to, let's just see here, mouse down, mouse up. So basically, yeah, when we release the mouse, right, because on the mouse up, we're going to want to affect the rigid body by giving it a force and, moving it along. So what I'm going to actually do here too, before I could do that, just so I don't have to keep doing this, I'm going to set up a rigid body and our usual RB2D. Okay. Probably not a huge issue in this game because once it's released, we're not doing too much with the rigid body. We're not calling it multiple times. Unlike, say, our asteroids game where we were constantly, doing the mouse up or whatever, we were adding force. But in this case, it's probably just a good idea to use that as RB2D. So what are we going to do? Well, on the mouse up, actually, well, yeah, I mean, we do a couple ways here. But, if we think about that, on the RB2D, let's just think about it first and then go back. So RB2D, we want to add force. Now the question is, how do we want to add force? Well, we could sort of call that, so direction to initial position. We want to sort of shoot it towards that initial position. Okay, position. I keep wanting to spell poison or something here. Now we don't have that variable, so we're going to create that variable right here, and it would be a vector 3. And we called it direction to initial position. And we're going to set that to basically the initial position minus the current position, so the transform dot position. All right. So when it subtracts those, it basically gets that direction because it's an X, Y, Z, and really we're just worried about the X, Y here, not the Z, but we've got that included. It doesn't matter. But that will give us the direction. So now when we're able to add that force, it will send it hopefully in the right direction. So let's take a look at this. Maybe not perfect yet, but it should move. So let's just see. And I don't think I had any errors. I thought something popped up there as an error. But what I'm going to do, I'll pull it back. Oops, we've got a null reference. Object reference not set to that. What is that? Direction to initial position, RB2D.add force. Oh, what did I forget? Mr. Fleming forgot something very important. on the awake or in the start, it doesn't really matter. We'll just put it in the awake for the moment. I forgot to do the... You guys are probably saying, Mr. Fleming, you forgot to grab the component. Yes, I did. So get that component, the rigid body 2D. Thank you for correcting me. So that should get rid of the error. Let's try going back. Try again. I got so excited there. Okay, so that should clear that away. Let's just try this again. Now, probably the force isn't enough. And if you're very observant, you will notice he's moving, and you can see that he's moving there. So he is heading that way. Now, what I'll do here for the moment is just put in a sort of a placeholder for an amount, just so that we can see that it's working. So if I put on, where are we here? Down here, this force here, I'm just going to multiply it by a certain number. Now, I'm going to make this a variable later on. I don't know, multiply it by 500. I always say go big or go home so we can actually see that change. So if we make that save there and go back and, oops, there we go. Just making sure that it is working as it should. There we go. So obviously it went shooting off. Now, one thing, it's going to keep going like that forever, right? Because we don't have gravity on. So we need to turn gravity on after we've launched it. And that might seem a little bit tricky, but it's actually very, very easy. We noticed in our rigid body, right? We turned off gravity scale. We can just simply access that from our script. So I'm going to go back in. And so once it's launched, I'm going to do the RB2D again. Dot, and I think I can grab gravity scale. There it is. And 1 is normal gravity. So we'll try it with 1. That should be good because we want it to kind of be realistic, as much as Angry Birds can be realistic. And let's just take a look at this. So we hit play. We launch. Now it's still a little bit high, but notice gravity scale's gone to 1, and you can see it is now heading down. So obviously the 500 is too big of a number, but we are getting that sort of parabolic arc, right? That trajectory that we expected. So that's a good sign. Now, obviously that bird would keep on going forever. Force is too much. And we also have to be able to, you know, if you think about it, that force, we want to sort of, based on the distance between the starting point, or that initial position, and the bird's position, we want to be able to calculate it so that the force actually changes, right? So even though I put 500 in there, we'll just sort of leave that for the moment and do a calculation to figure that out. And obviously we need to reset it as well. But first what we'll do is we'll just deal with sort of resetting the scene, and nothing too amazing at the moment. We'll just get it to reset if it goes up way too high. So what I'm going to do is just check my bird here. Just press F. 1 second here, red bird, F, just to zoom in. Okay, so just checking to see where does he go out of the camera. If I lift him up, so I'm looking roughly, yeah, about 6, you know, he's on the y-axis, he's above, so definitely 7, 8, 9, something like that. We'd probably want him to reset. So I'm going to set it to just around 10 is probably good there. I mean, he'll be out, but it will give a little bit of a pause. So what I'm going to do is just put a conditional in to sort of be checking for this. And so if I come down here, I'm going to go back up and into my update function. And basically, I'm going to say is that if the transform.position.y, because we're only worrying about the vertical, and I said if it's greater than 10, it's not a hard-coded number here, what's going to happen? Well, something's going to happen in the parentheses here. Basically, we just want to reset the scene. So obviously, if we're using the scene, we're going to use the scene manager. So I have to go up to using Unity Engine.scene management. So make sure you put that in. And then here, we'll sort of do 2 things. We'll do a string variable. So we're actually going to grab the current scene name. And we're going to spend more time with this, with a scene manager, the level manager, later on. But what we can do is we can get the active scene, right? So we, get active scene dot name. So that will actually grab the scene's name. So no matter what scene we're in, it will reset it for us. And then, well, it will grab the name. Then we have to use that name to reset it for us. So then we'll just go to Scene Manager again. This time we'll reload the scene, so just load scene. And then we're going to load what scene? Well, we're going to load the current scene name. And what's useful about this is that it will work for any scene, right? So that's all there really is. We just created basically a if statement that's going to be checking all the time to see if the bird is greater than 10. If that's happened, then it's going to reset the scene. So let's just make sure that that works. So save your work there. Go back to Unity. And when we hit play, now I think we did have it powerful enough, so it should go flying out. So if I do that, put a nice high trajectory, off it goes, and then you can see we've got our new scene sort of reloaded. So if I could do that again, now that was interesting, I guess, because I just clicked and then, yeah. So that's actually an interesting little bug there that I just found, because what happens is if I click once, obviously I didn't have enough power, and then if I sort of click and drag again, now my initial, and you can see he's rotating in that position, my initial position is there now, and he heads way down. So yeah, there's some interesting things going on. So we'll have to see. I didn't quite, no, oh, I'm off there. So yeah, lots of stuff still to do, but we do have at least the bird launching. And we'll do a little bit more to deal with the power, so we're not always firing at 500 or 600, whatever we've got it at, and we'll do that in the next video.